Welcome to my essential poetry and literature reading. I'm Andri and I do warmly welcome you. Today we shall see something more on Federico Garcia Lorca's Gypsy myth and something more on Romancero Gitano, its first edition, and poet's aim in writing these special ballads. Gypsy Ballads, Romancero Gitano, in its first edition was also titled Primer Romancero Gitano, meaning first gypsy ballads. There may be two different interpretations of the title. This is the first collection of ballads written about the gypsy people, and also is the first collection of Spanish ballads written by the poet about the gypsies. In the former interpretation, the poet had the ambition of creating the first collection ever of poetry about the gypsies. And in the latter interpretation, the poet had the intention of writing more poems about the gypsy people after this first collection. Which interpretation is correct, there is no way for the reader to find out. However, it is clear that the poet intended to start something that had not existed before, and that was the first literary collection about the gypsy culture, about the gypsy world, about the gypsy mythology, written ever in the form of the traditional Spanish ballad. It is also clear that the poet intended to create the gypsy myth in this collection of poetry as acclaimed by the poet himself in his lecture on gypsy ballads, Conferencia Recital del Romancero Gitano, given in Barcelona in 1935. The first two ballads of the book, Ballad of the Moon Moon and Preciosa and the Wind, contain two essential gypsy myths created by him: the myth of the moon as goddess and the myth of the wind as satyr. Now, these two myths created by Federico do not yet fully develop in the beginning two poems of gypsy ballads. They're like some kind of the opening scene of a display of other mythical figures, their stories, their interpretations, their background and interactions, as will be discussed in my outgoing posts on my Creator Buy Me Coffee page. Now, we should say something on Federico Garcia's mythical figures. The most symbolic character in the book is probably the moon, described as female, very powerful female, and sometimes as goddess watching over and interfering with the happenings here on the earth. Moon La Luna plays an important role in this collection of ballads. For example, we have one excerpt which I shall read it now. The word moon or la luna begins the whole book, and the moon is described as the possessive and jealous goddess. And this is some kind of phenomena who takes away, for example, a child, a gypsy child, and flies back to the sky. After all these ballads, the moon appears several times in other ballads in the book, and it's frequently described as the gypsy moon or la luna gitana, especially in a Sonnambula ballad. Green, how I want you, green, under the gypsy moon, things are staring at her, things she cannot see. And here, beside the moon, beside the gypsy moon, we have black pain, which is highly symbolic figure. Pain, in Spanish language, la pena, is a recurrent theme in the Andalusian deep song, or so-called cante hondo, sung mostly by the gypsy people and later on popularized as flamenco songs. Federico Garcia Lorca, in his lecture Conferencia Recital del Romancero Gitano, talks very, very powerfully and deeply about this pain in the gypsy sense. Pain, according to the poet, does not have to have a cause, though the deepest form of pain actually comes from the fear of death. In pain, the gypsies are able to smile. They are confronting death with a smile, with a song. There is no way to end this pain except by death. It's with this very idea that the Ballad of Black Pain was written. La Pena Negra becomes a character in this poem incarnated by the woman named Soledad Montoya. Pain, a human emotion, which should not be categorized as a gypsy emotion. However, being passionate and expressive people, the gypsies are able to express their sorrow in an extreme and very sincere way. The evidence of their expression makes the emotion unique and very solid and powerful. The gypsy pain is formed in its expression, not only in its nature. It's not the kind of pain that matters, but the way of expressing it. Among the characters in gypsy ballads, there exists an interesting interrelation of the mythical, religious, Andalusian, and gypsy elements. Out of the 18 poems, 4 are titled with names of saints: San Miguel, San Rafael, San Gabriel, Martirio de Santa Olaya. And the last poem of the book is about a story from the Bible, Tamar y Amnon. The martyrdom of Saint Olaya relates the story of Saint Olaya in Merida. New Merida belongs to the community of Extremadura in Spain, but in the 5th century it was part of Andalusia. For this reason, Federico includes the story of Saint Olaya in the Andalusian myth. And now, the wide variety of these mythical characters, these mythical features and very powerful mythical backgrounds with their stories and interactions enriches the context of Federico's ballads. The poet's imagination and clever use of existing gypsy and religious stories, well confined in the traditional ballad form, create a special and mystical atmosphere, a combination of the archaic and the modern. Lorca's Andalusian myth, as expressed in his ballads, is not a systematic explanation of either the nature or the supernatural world. It is experimental poetry, very much avant-garde, in which a mystic world is told in scenes with gaps in between, suggesting a possibility of a full-length, completed Andalusian epic.